Okay, Rena, I'm gonna go ahead and start the presentation then. Log in. And then in the upper left corner, you'll be seeing a new button. You press that, and you can choose uploading a project for XLS forms, which we're not going to be learning now, or create your own project. So you create your own project, which is basically creating a form or a survey, and you can give it a name, right? In this case, we'll be trying to do a school survey. We can add here in the description the name of the project where it's for. Yep. And then, as you did with your username, you select the sector. In this case, it's economic and social development, country where the survey is going to be applied. In this case, it's Uganda. Select it, and we information of KOBO. We'll create the project, and now we're going to be having a blank form here. So to add your first question, you have to press the plus sign here. When you press the plus sign, you get the blank space to write your first question. In this case, for a school survey, we'd like to start with the geographical location of the school, right? So we put the street, and we add the question. When you press add question, the green button, you'll get several options, which kind of questions you can choose, right? In this case, it's a text question because they require the enumerator to enter a text. This means you can write any letter, number, or symbol. So the next question would be the number. So you have the question, and instead of text this time, you press number. Not decimal, because addresses don't have decimals, but the whole number. To limit the choices the enumerator has when inputting data and limits mistakes. So probably the next question would be which municipality belongs to. And we add the question and we choose a select one option. This means they will only be able to select one of the listed options. In this case, this project has 3 municipalities. And we add a third one. Oh. All right. You can see on the side, you can add you can leave the values automatic, or you can add your own. This means that when the data arrives to you, these municipalities can have a code, either 1, 2, 3, or you just keep the same names if you leave it in automatic. You can add another question. You can keep adding questions like CED, regions, and things like this. In this case, we'll add an interesting one that KOBO allows is the collection of GPS coordinates. So we'll put record GPS coordinates. We have the question, and we select point. For GPS input, we can put points, lines, or areas. The points, you just select one point. So in this case, we select points. This means when the user, the enumerator opens this question, he'll get a prompt saying, do you want to record your location? He'll press yes, and you get the GPS location. So the next question in a school survey, in this case, it will be if the school has access to services. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing which kind of questions you can build in KOBO, right? And how do they work? Of course, depending on your area, if your area is WASH, you would do it in a different way, different kind of questions, right? but it's the same structure. So the question would be, has the school access to water? You can add the question. You select one. In this case, you put yes or no. The following question from that would be mainly the water the use in the school provides from, and here we can list a series of options. It could be piped, it could be a well. So by choosing this kind of questions, select many, we allow the enumerator to choose multiple options. It could be that the house, the school mainly gets water from a well and also some piped or delivery trucks. This is kind of question you use for multiple answers, right? So in a case you'd like to make a Likert scale, or for example, to determine the level of satisfaction of a particular aspect of the school, you can make a question that's called a rating. So you can put mark the degree of agreement or disagreement with the following. So the idea is, like, usually state. So the idea with Likert scale is that you measure multiple dimensions of a satisfaction. In this case, the location of the school, the neighborhood, the security, the cleanliness, the quality of the streets, the lighting of the public spaces, or even the quality of the water. So to do that, we press rating, and here you'll get a table, right? So above you'll see different options in which you put the different Likert scale options, right? So the first one would be you strongly disagree. Then you just put disagree. And you keep adding another one by pressing the little plus button next to it. And now disagree or disagree. I agree. And final one would be I strongly agree. Take care not to press the automatic gray space between that, under that, because that means you'll change the way the data is input. If you do that, take care of putting a code that you will understand later on. Like in this case, usually for Likert scales, you put a value of 1 with strongly disagree, 2 with disagree, 3 with neither, agree would be 4, and strongly agree would be 5. This way, when they mark the level of agreement with each of the statements, you'll get a value, and then you can add most of the values to get an overall idea of the level of satisfaction of the multiple dimensions you're measuring, right? So the first statement would be, I am satisfied with my neighborhood in general. You can also put a value to that, but in this case, we're going to leave it open. You have to think that every time you generate each one of these questions will be a different column in your database. So if you put a value here in automatic, this means that, I don't know, if you put here satisfaction 1, it means that in your column, the header of the column will be called satisfaction 1. And then the value in the cell for each of the respondents will be whatever they select here, right? So we can also ask them about security on the neighborhood, so that we add another question here. Then we can also ask about the cleanliness. We can also ask about the neighbors of the school. And the public spaces around. Right. So that will give you a Likert scale with several, in this case, it's 5 items. You can see the 4 items here relate to the general idea of the neighborhood of the school, right? We can also start asking about like questions about particular dates, like date of the construction of the school. So in this case, instead of pressing a text, number, or select many or one, we just put date. We can also put time or time of date, both of them. In this case, we just need a date. So the interface, when the survey starts being filled, will be just a date. You cannot put anything else, right? Important thing that you can also do here is matrix questions, which are basically the same thing as simple questions, but they're organized and asked in a way that are quite simple for the user. In this case, we'll ask the number of teachers number of students enrolled in the school by gender and grade, in this case. So we have the question, and we're going to put a matrix question in this case. So in the column, we select this cog next to it, and we select which kind of response this will be. In this case, it will be a number, right? You can also put select one, select many, or text. It's a number because we're asking for the number of students enrolled. The label of the column will be male, and how it will be called in the data set, it will be called male underscore STD. And we will say that the answer is required. Then the same thing for the next column. So we press the cog. We say it's a number. Email in this case. Email underscore STD. And it's also required. So now we have the categories of male and female. Now we go to the rows. And we can add, in this case, grade 1. And as a prefix in the column will be called G1, right? To add the second grade, we press the plus sign in the bottom, press the cog again, and select grade 2. Remember that when you write the data or the automatic parts, you avoid using spaces. They're not recognized. But in this case, the program automatically changes them to underscore. Like for example, put here G space 2, it provides the underscore, right? All right. So that will give an interface in which the user will be able to put a number here, a number here, a number here, a number here. You can later on make additions, subtractions, or wherever operations you want in the same survey or later on with the data set. One of the final things I'm going to show you in this short introduction is that we can make raster lists. Within the same survey, you can make subset databases. So this means, like in this case, in a school, we'd like to know the teachers, their age and their gender, and that wouldn't be easy. That wouldn't be easy to lay out in just a simple survey with one single database, right? So what we do, we create a list, a set of questions that repeats itself, and they can generate a table aside, but they're linked with a particular number. So we'll start by asking the number of teachers in this school. We have the question, and we say it must be a whole number, right? And based on that, we'll generate a group. We start by writing the first question in the group. So it's the teacher's name. We have the question, in this case, it's a text. Take care that if you had made a mistake and you write that the teacher's name is a number, you'd have to delete the question. You cannot edit that. That's fine. But you can always go back and change here what's written. In this case, the teacher's first name. Right. If you want to delete the question, you press delete here. There are other options here that I'll explain a bit. The teacher's last name. You have the question, again it's a text. The teacher's age. An interesting thing you can do here is you can make the question refer to an answer the person gave before. For example, if you put the teacher's name, instead of putting teacher here, you can put $, dot, squiggly line, having issues with the line here. There we go. And we put here the name of these of this question. To go find the name of the question, you have to press the cog here of the settings, and you'll find the name of the question right here. In this case, it's teachers underscore s. Oops. Simplify it, and we'll just call it teacher. Close this, and we go back to the other question. Sorry. Number of teachers. So we go back to the question we were writing and write $sign to make a reference to the other question. So it's take care. Notice that it's not a parenthesis; it's a squiggly parenthesis. We paste the name of the question before, and then we close that parenthesis. In that case, this question will immediately put the name of the teacher, and put if he puts Fred's. We have the question, and it's an age, so it's a number, right? We could also put a date for birthday. And finally, put the gender. So in this case, we copy the same thing here, but we put gender. We have the question, and we select one, so it's male or female. Right, so here we have a set of questions that we would like to repeat, right? So we select all of these questions by pressing Ctrl, select all of them, and we generate a group. To create a group, you press the button up here. Create group with selected questions. Now they're a group. We'll call them the group teachers. So later on, I'm not going to explain here in this short crash course, but you can build a condition in which this set of questions repeats itself the number of teachers you input in this question above. Okay, so in this case, we would have already our survey ready. One thing you need to do before is press settings, and you can select which kind of metadata the survey will collect. These are not questions that will be collected by asking the enumerator. It's just questions that will be collected by asking the device itself, like your cell phone or your computer. So you press the date of the day, the ID of the device, the username, serial, subscriber's ID, and the phone number. In some cases, if there's no SIM in the phone, this data will not be collected, and the field will just be left blank. So that's not an issue. We close the settings, and we save the survey. Note that you can always download the form in an Excel form. So you'll be looking at how the Excel looks in an Excel and modify it from there. You can always create groups. So in this case, I'll select all these questions by pressing Control, municipality, and I'll create a group and I'll call it location, right? Okay, so now we have a clarity of which kind of questions you have. There are some other kind of questions that we're not going to go through here, but I'm going to make a short explanation of them. There are some of them you can just create a simple note, which will be like an explanation of what's a survey. You can collect a barcode that's using the camera of the phone. An acknowledgement, which usually used at the beginning of the survey to say, like in this case, I accept that Save the Children uses my data for meal monitoring. None of my personal information will be shared. Okay, that's a very bad acknowledgement, but that's it. You get the idea, right? So in this case, you get an acknowledgement. You can also create rankings in which you give a series of options, and the persons can list the options from priority, from first, second, third, fourth. Depends on you. You can collect audio, like for short interviews, or photos in the case in which certain enumerators who have to visit construction sites or locations in which you have to show that they have been there. That's very important. Also make some short videos for interviews. And that's about it. In this case, we'll do this as an acknowledgement, and we can move. Here you saw that I created the acknowledgement inside the teachers group, so we can just drag it by selecting it and moving it around. We want this one to be just on the top, right? The top of all the questions, so just moving up here. Oh, it didn't work. So instead of moving in this clunky way between all the questions, I can just press here and collapse all the questions. Right? Or open them all. So here I left them all collapsed. So I take my acknowledgement, and you can recognize the acknowledgement by the logo on the side, and I just move it up here. Right. So I know an acknowledgement is something that without you cannot do any of the following questions, right? So what I'll do is I'll set a condition. So before that, I'll select this set of questions by pressing Control again and making a group with them. And then I go to the conditions of those groups, and in skip logic, press skip logic, and you add a condition. In this case, it'll ask me which of the following questions on top the condition will apply. So there's only one question on top, so it's just one. It's the acknowledgement. So I press the acknowledgement. And the condition is that it has to be answered. If it is not answered, then these questions will not appear. So we apply that to all our groups. Skip logic, add condition. Again, in this case, we have the other questions in the list because they're above. We go to acknowledgement, it was answered. You can also add another condition or delete the condition we have on itself. Always remember to save, because if you leave the website, nothing will be saved. You'll lose all the progress you made. In this case, it's not a group, it's an individual question, the number of teachers in the school. And you see that settings are a bit different. You also have the option of validation criteria. In this case, we know that teachers should be between 0 and 100. We don't expect schools to have more than 100 teachers in this case. So we add a condition here. You can also add manually conditions if you know how to do some basic Excel form code, but this way is very easy. So the condition would be that this question response has to be greater than, less than, equal than, or equal to, less than or equal to, and you would give the number, right? So in this case, it has to be greater than or equal to 1. You can't have a school without teachers, right? But it has to be under 100, because we know that schools, that's the maximum that we have in our area. So we create another validation, and this question response has to be less than or equal to 100. So here under that, you can just select if the criteria has to be matching all of them or just one. In this case, it's all of them, right? So the number has to be between 1 and 0. And we have an option of adding an error message. In this case, the number of teachers must be between 1 and 100. Okay. So those were the settings. We can close the settings like that, or simply repressing settings again. And we also, remember, we wanted to add the skip logic. In this case, it's the number of teachers, and we have to get the acceptance, right? It was answered. The same thing with the other group. Skip logic, add the condition, we select the first question, the acknowledgement, and it has to be answered. Okay. All right, so now we have a form ready with the list of conditions. You can keep adding conditions, such as in this case, if the number here is 0, which it wouldn't be possible. If it's 0, this set of questions will not appear. Or any other by that matter. Okay. So that more or less explains what we can do with KOBO, which kind of questions we can build. Now we can save this and get out, or we can preview. Preview lets you test your form if it has any mistakes. For example, I wrote the code to make a reference to a previous question, or if you want to see if your skip logics are making sense. So this would be very useful for that. So you saw I press OK and the questions appear. If I don't have that OK, the questions are not there. You can test the groups. In this case, the street would be Kulu Street. The number of the building, you cannot, I tried to input any letters and that won't be possible, so I'll just try a number and that works. I choose a municipality, and then it allows me to choose a GPS location. In this case, I'm on a computer, so it gives me this interface. In the phone, it's a bit different, and you can see that in a different video I made. You can see here that we made a mistake. We left one of the group names blank, so it's just called group. We might want to change that, so we make a note of that. We keep trying. Let me see. Okay, we can select most of them. Here's the Likert scales. Okay, it's good. Right. The dates, okay, that works as well. Yeah. Male, there's 3 male, there's 4 female. In grade 2, there's 4 and 5. So there's 1 teacher in the school. If I put 0, I get an error there. The number of teachers must be between 100. And here we get the questions. I noticed I made a mistake here because there's no option of repeating a set of questions. And there's also a mistake here with the reference. I validate, and at least there's no issues with the data entry form. But I know I made a mistake here with repeating the group, right? So I close this. And I go back to the teachers. Here you cannot really see it because it's in the configuration mode. So you press that again and you see access of the questions. You have access to the questions. So in this case, just put the teachers, and I'll forget the reference because for this video it'll take a bit too long to fix that. But you can do it. You have to take my word for it. I made other videos, you can see that. And in the configuration, we put the option repeat. Repeat this group if necessary. So we check that box. And we can also add that all questions are in one page in a simple screen or in different screens. What difference does this make? In the case of a phone, you get each question each time. So you have a big screen now because it's a computer, so you can put all the questions at once. If you put this, the program will make an effort to put all of them in one single place. We won't need it now. So we'd go to stat, final thing. Okay, there's a logic here, there's a street, there's a number, municipality, a location. Oh, again, I forgot to change the group. Note that I didn't make all these questions to be mandatory. I can do that as well. To do that, you go to settings and make the mandatory question yes or no, right? You can also give a short hint to the question, a default response, which is rarely used. And this is a bit more advanced, so we won't go through that for the appearances, but you can change which kind of letter it looks, but you need to know a bit, some basic coding for that. So usually if you would put that most or maybe all questions are mandatory that allow it, of course. So in that case, if we don't fill them up, we'll get an error. Let's try this. Okay, let's try to leave it blank, and it says, okay, there's an error. Okay, so you get those errors and you fill them up. There's a date. Right. In this case, we could add a condition that the gender must be between that certain, the amount of people male in that grade must be over 0, sorry. So I validate, so it's okay. So now we're ready to deploy the form. We save that, we close it, and that brings us back to our dashboard. So from the dashboard, we can press on the survey itself. This is a draft version of the school survey. We can press deploy. We can also press preview and replace it with an Excel file. You can download the Excel file itself and modify the Excel file. This is a bit more advanced, so we won't look at that. You can, which is very interesting. You can also share this project with other people of your team, or you can clone the project to see, like, you have to make a few questions changes, right? So we deploy it. This means that we get the options of collecting data, right? So we can open the survey. In this case, it opens the survey on the computer, but we can also copy the link to it. I always recommend to leave the option of offline, online, multiple submissions, right? In this case, you can use KOBO Collect to collect data. There's another video I made to show you how to set up KOBO Collect on your phone and how to link this to your account and use your forms. I'm going to make a short presentation of how that works. So basically what you get is, this is you here. So you log into KOBO Collect, you have access to your database there, and you set up KOBO Collect on each of the devices you're going to collect data with. You download the form in each of the devices, and then you train the enumerators. Then the enumerators with that device will ask each of the households, in this case, for data, and then this data will go directly to your database, right? One thing to have in mind is that each of the questions means one column, and there's going to be some columns that are metadata. So it's a very basic layout of a database. As explained, each of the answers, each of the forms filled will be one line, and in some cases where you have rosters, like in our example here, it was the names, the teachers, their age, and their gender. There's a secondary table that's linked to this one through a key. We can do that in another video. I can show you how to link databases in Excel. I don't know. Okay, yeah. Let's fill up one form. In this case, we're going to do it on the computer. It's going to be called test 1. So you can always share this link to anybody you want, and they can also fill up a form like that. Or you can do it using KOBO Collect, which is the other form I can share a video with you. So we press there, and we get an automatic location where we are. In this case, I am in Rome. Yes, we have access to water. It's piped water in this case. I am very satisfied with my neighborhood, security, and public spaces. I know this building was built a long time ago, in the 1920s to March 7th. This is not a school, but in this case we'll put there's 300, no, there's like 100 people, male, sorry, 100 females in the first grade. There's 120 and 120, very gender equitative school. And here you can put the number of teachers, right? So we know there's 4 teachers in this building, and we can keep adding names, right? So it's the first name is Chris. The last name is that. This teacher is 28, and he's a male. We can add an extra teacher because we said there. Let's say it's 2 of them, so it's shorter. So the second teacher's name is Florencia. The last name is Ming. The teacher age here in this case is 29, and she's a female. And we can keep adding like that. This will generate, like I told you before, a secondary table that you can link. This makes it a lot more simpler to collect data, like in the case of schools or households. On each of the school you collect data, you have, you know exactly where they're coming from, right? Okay, and now we submit the form. You can either save it as a draft, and this option is also available in the phone, or you can submit it yourself there. So now, once you submit it, you automatically get, if you were a numerator, you automatically get to the next survey you have to fill it, right? So it goes back to page 1. If you saw up here, you can see that there was the survey has been successfully sent. This means that whether you're online or offline, this tool will still be collecting data, right? But once you get to online, you can access. You can actually send the forms once you get connection, right? Okay, so in this case now we already have some data collected here. And once you have some data inputted, you should get the option here when you go into your survey to press data. So when you select the data, you have different options of downloading it. KOBO produces a simple analysis. It's a very dumb analysis, you call it, because it's not knowing what it's measuring or what it's making graphs of. But sometimes it could be very useful. You can look at the table of the database. Here you can see there's only one entrance, and here the columns up here are the questions. The first ones are the metadata, and the other ones are particular questions. You can see above the data has the name of the group, and then the full question. All right. If there's some pictures uploaded, then you'll be able to see some pictures. And you can download those pictures by pressing download. You can also download the entire database as an Excel by pressing Excel or Legacy Excel. You can use comma separated values, SPSS labels, GPS coordinates. This is important when you're collecting a lot of geographical information points, like the location of your schools and this kind of stuff, or your beneficiaries by that matter. And it makes a few questions here. Do you want the labels written out, like the labels you saw before, or the values on the headers? In this case, I prefer values and headers, right? And I decided not to include the group in the headers. The groups is, you saw that we made small groups. Okay, so we press export and we get a small processing feature here. It's going to be ready probably in a few seconds, and we can download that data. That data will come down to your computer as an Excel file. It should open in Chrome, and then you can download it directly, right? So you have all the questions here. So what are the school provide pipe? It was 1 in this case. In this case, 1 means it was selected, 0 it was not selected. This is for multiple answers, right? You can also configure which way you want that downloaded. The date, yeah, like I told you before, each of the questions is one thing. I remember that I told you that there are certain groups, right? There's a list of roster of teachers in this case. We can access that by going to the next tab, and you can see that we have the first teacher's name, last name, the age, the gender, and here you have a parent index. The parent index is the way you're going to link this to databases. At the end of the survey, there should also be an ID index, it's this case. So we know that the survey is number 1. You get these 2 people in this list are part of this school. If I would have kept adding another survey, it would be number 2 and the list of teachers in that school. All right. So I think almost our time is up. We have a few minutes. So I can show you other interesting things you can do with KOBO. So I'll go back here. And we can look at maps. In this case, we just have 1 point. There's just one data entry. But you can look at maps and where the distribution they are, where the geographically distributed, and you can also disaggregate them by the responses. You can disaggregate them and imagine by the if the school has access to water or not, yes or no. In this case, it's just 1. But I can show you other services. We've been doing this before, and you can look at this Google Maps. Yeah. So in this case, I'm going to show you an email. So here you have a map of the data collected in Gulu. This is actual data. And this is disaggregated by color in the municipalities, right? In which their home is located in this case. So you can tell that the youth have not been transiting very far from where they're interviewed because the colors of the points match very well the districts. You can also see a level of satisfaction, or their level of improvement on their income due to our intervention. You can see there's no geographical marker here. If you would see that all the ones in your GULU are all red or blue, means that GULU has a strong correlation with a strong improvement of the income. Whereas outside of GULU, you would have like a 3 or some reddish or a yellow. It would mean that there's an effect in the proximity to GULU with the capacity to improve the income. This permits to do a very interesting analysis also of proximity to services, in this case, which place they choose to go to in this case is health, primary health. And you can see that all the ones in one area particularly go to one particular health facility, whereas another place. And you can say also that this depends on the road infrastructure. It might be that this location is closer to another position, but geographically closer, but the roads are better to go to another one, right? And so on. It's very interesting what you have to do, and there's a lot more. It's a lot more than this first hour introduction. But I hope that that was useful. And
that was useful, yes. I joined halfway through, sorry.
Oh, don't worry. I thought, okay, my time was kind of limited, so I thought I would record it for you, and then you could just see it, right?
Yeah, that is great. I mean, I'm really sorry we had a power